Hey, it's Lewis, and similar to what we did the other day, at that time of year where you look back at the previous year and you kind of compile your own best of, I didn't count them down again necessarily. This time around, I just took some records, some music, if you will, that I liked this past year that helped me get through the year, whether it be lyrics or just stuff that I wanted to listen to. So we'll start with that today. I did stick primarily to the rock genre, even though there was some pretty good stuff that came out in other formats, since I spend time on the air on rock radio, program rock radio, and that's what's paying the bills. I love the format, so let's not keep it close to home for this one. Plus, I think rock has had some really good and really strong bands surface over the last couple of years, and 2020 no exception. Even though the touring industry certainly took a hit, there was no live music, and a lot of times, of course, bands live on the road, and they didn't get a chance to do that. The one thing I do think that happens in 2020 is because of all the bands that had so much downtime, we probably will get some really good music coming up this year in 2021, just for the simple fact that when you can't tour, you might as well sit at home and write, right? So let's start with some albums, shall we? Picking it up with the guys who are really one of my favorite bands that are underrated as all hell, and it's a shame because Chris Robertson has one of the best voices I think out there right now. I speak of Blackstone Cherry. They dropped a record called The Human Condition, and it is one of those that you can put on and listen to from cover to cover and not be disappointed. Some really good stuff on there, some stuff that hits home, especially from a lyric standpoint, like Again and In Love with the Pain, but then there's also some things that you can rock out to, like Ringing in My Head, and they do a cool cover of ELO as Don't Bring Me Down as well. So it's a little something for everybody. Again, if you've not heard the band Blackstone Cherry, check them out. The Human Condition is the name of the album, and it definitely belongs on this list. Some might argue this one may not belong on the list. This band tends to get a lot of hatred, and I don't know that it's necessarily always warranted. It's kind of like the way people hate Nickelback and Imagine Dragons. You're starting to be able to throw Five Finger Death Punch into that list, and it's a shame because F8 is a pretty strong album, and I think if there was a song that you could say snapshotted the entire year of 2020, it would be a little bit off, and I think that's why I put it on the list. The whole album is pretty good, it rocks pretty hard, but then you get stuff that makes you stop in your tracks and think the way that a little bit off is. So F8, pretty strong. The guys were already working on F9, so whether you're a Five Finger Death Punch fan or not, they do have new stuff coming. Some things that we were expecting this year that dropped and were kind of interesting. Pearl Jam, Gigaton. Now, Pearl Jam was the first band to say they weren't going on tour. When all this pandemic stuff started, they put their tour on hold right away and said, nope, not going out there. At the time, people looked at them like, you guys, what the hell? And then a few months later, everybody else started doing it too. But Gigaton was Pearl Jam's release this year. And the first track, Dance of the Clairvoyants, was not my cup of tea. I listened to it and I was like, what the hell is this? But then when you get into the rest of the album, you realize it's a really good Pearl Jam record. It kind of takes you back to that sound that you got on 10 and some of their previous albums, and it makes you feel good. There's tracks like Quick Escape, 7 O'Clock that I like a lot, and of course Super Blood Wolf Moon that makes it definitely has a more of a Pearl Jam feel to it. So if you can get past Dance of the Clairvoyants, the rest of the album, I think, is a really strong offering from Eddie and the guys. So Gigaton on my list. Also on my list, AC/DC. Wasn't sure what to expect. We knew we were going to get new AC/DC, but it kept getting delayed, and they celebrated the 40th anniversary of Back in Black, which most would argue is their signature album. And then when you hear about new AC/DC music, you kind of wonder what that's going to be like, especially with the passing of Malcolm Young. But Power Up does not disappoint. It's their best work in years. I think it sounds exactly like you would want an AC/DC record to sound, which is by all means not a bad thing. You get the strong guitar riffs, and as soon as Brian Johnson sings a note, you know exactly who that band is. Some really good stuff on it. Of course, the first track, Shot in the Dark, is what they came out of the gate with, and it was exploded out of the gate with that. Demon Fire's good, No Man's Land is good, and they say they have enough stuff in the vault to keep doing AC/DC albums. So the guys, even though they're in their 70s, might not be done yet. So AC/DC alive and kicking this year with Power Up on my list. Moving on to a band that we haven't heard from for quite a while, but they are definitely road warriors. Cedar used to put out an album and then they would tour forever, and then they would do another album and rinse and repeat. Well, there was no tour this time around, but the guys did drop some new music in the form of Civis Pacem Parabellum, which is arguably one of their best albums ever. It has that gritty, down, sometimes depressing Cedar rock that you're used to, but there's also some really cool stuff that kind of shows you how the band has matured a little bit. Sean Morgan of Cedar produced the entire thing, and of course you can mosh pit to stuff like Dead and Gone, but then you can also get back and feel good about stuff like Wasteland as too. So check out Cedar. It's good to have those guys back, and they put in a strong offering this year with Civis Pacem Parabellum. Another band that you want to talk about road warriors, Shinedown. Now, Shinedown on the Down Cycle, they are working on their next album, but that did not stop Brent Smith and Zach Myers from doing their own thing. If you've ever seen Shinedown live, they are known for their cover of Leonard Skinner's Simple Man, and for a long time, Zach and Brent had been putting up cover songs on YouTube from time to time, covering different things in shows. So why not do an album of covers, which is exactly what they did. While Shinedown had a little downtime, Brent and Zach did a drive-in concert series and released a Volume 1 and Volume 2 album, led by Not Mad Enough, which is a little bit of a political hinge, but at the same time, I dig the song, and Brent's voice is amazing. I think with the almost 20 years that band has been functioning, he's another one that as soon as he starts singing a song, you immediately recognize his voice, especially if you were a fan of Shinedown. This one's got some new stuff that they did together, like Not Mad Enough, but then they also have some covers on these. Of course, the Simple Man cover is on there as well. His version of Unchained Melody is incredible. So is their version of In Excess is Never Tear Us Apart. There's a lot of good stuff on that, so don't sleep on the Smith and Myers. Also, don't sleep on Bush. Bush back in this album, The Kingdom, takes a lot of crap because people say, well, it sounds too much like old Bush. Well, that's kind of what I want that band to sound like. I think Bush is a band that their old stuff like 16 Stone and Razorblade Suitcase plays as well now as it did back in the 90s. And The Kingdom is kind of a throwback to that sound. A lot of the songs on the record are very similar to things like Glycerine and Come Down. A lot of it probably has to do with the fact that Gavin Rossdale, he gets a little poetic in the lyric area sometimes, but there are things that really speak to your soul, like in Undone, Quicksand, Blood River, and of course the lead track, Flowers on a Grave. In my opinion, the title track, The Kingdom, is the best song on the record, but it is definitely a worthy Bush admittance into your music collection. And we'll round out this year's list with probably one of my favorite albums that was unexpected. Now, Chris Cornell's passing is one that still resonates with a lot of people. Definitely gone too soon, and definitely one of the best voices in rock, maybe ever. But we were kind of wondering what was going on, and for a long time he had been covering stuff like Nothing Compares to You and whatnot on Howard Stern and in his own little acoustic performances, and people said, hey Chris, you should do an album of covers, which he started working on prior to his passing, and now they're going to release it in various volumes. It started with Volume 1 and led off by his cover of Guns N' Roses' Patience, which, again, popular power rock ballad, very hard to kind of make it your own, but Chris did just that. I do miss the whistles when I hear his version of Patience, but I'm happy that he didn't try to do a direct copy, but still just his voice resonates and is so powerful in the song. It works, and that's not even the best cover on the album. You've got stuff like Watching the Wheels. It's amazing. His version of Nothing Compares to You. So when the album is called Nobody Sings Like You Do Anymore, they are not lying when it comes to Chris Cornell. So anyway, that's a lot of the best stuff that I think I listened to in 2020. Feel free to like, feel free to dislike, add to my list, tell me I'm crazy because there's stuff I left off. Agree, disagree. That's the beauty of music. It's all up to personal interpretation. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Be good.